It is Saturday, March 25th, 2017. This is Room in the Trees, a podcast about duck runs.
Totally duck runs.
The following was recorded on March 16th, 2017. This is episode number 38, 16-unit birdhouse. Room in the Trees is hosted by Sabrina Harrison and me, Trent Reynolds. Show notes, including pictures, links, video, and more for every episode can be found at roominthetrees.com. If you like this podcast, please consider showing your support. You can become a subscribing patron at patreon.com/room. Please rate us or write a review on iTunes. It helps us reach a wider audience. And
share with a friend. The t-shirts totally rock. I've got to say, I got mine last week. Julia did a fantastic job of designing and getting it all up.
Yes, thank you, Julia.
Thank you, Julia. She's been interning for us for the past 3 months. So this week, Trent,
we are talking to
Corey, who you heard about last week episode.
Yes. It was a fantastic conversation. I felt like we could have talked for another 2 hours.
I was thrilled that he joined us, and I love laughing together and having the first friend he was introduced to of mine. So it's really fun to feel that connection happening. It's great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Corey.
Oh, he built a barn and a duck run, and
he's 6'4".
And he's 6'4".
He's a great, great person, and I'm very grateful he's in my life.
And here you go.
All right, are you ready for this? I can't tell. It's on Wikipedia, so this could be entirely nonsense. But flibbertigibbet is a Middle English word referring to a flighty or whimsical person. Usually, bear with me. Usually a young woman. In modern use, it is used as a slang term, especially in Yorkshire, for a gossipy or overly talkative person. Okay, so I completely misused the word, and I
thought you were going to say it was like a leprechaun or something.
Well,
no.
There's a partial truth there, maybe. I would not dismiss it entirely.
Well, you can say that. I can't. So.
Yes, you. Well, nice to introduce you guys. Nice to introduce you.
Nice to meet you. Yes, nice to meet you, Corey.
It's good to hear your voice instead of trading emails.
All right.
Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. I've been looking forward to it.
How's your day going, Trent?
I just ran in from dropping by the new studio space, and so my brain's kind of transitioning from thoughts of shelving and lighting and stuff like that. It's been a good day.
That's exciting.
Yes, it is exciting. I can't wait.
Trent, can I ask you a question?
Please.
I've listened to some of your episodes, and what I'm curious about is where I can see your paintings and or the media or what it is that you do, because Sabrina shared a few of them with me, and I have to say they're quite impressive. And I just was curious if you had a website or a location or someplace where I could look at them.
I guess it's a cliche. I need to update my website. But it is Trenton Reynolds. My full name is Trenton, TrentonReynolds.
Okay.
.com.
Cool. I will absolutely check that out. Thank you.
Please do. So I've been editing the last week's episode all day today. So in listening to your guys's, what's the right word there? Your guys's is not a word. It's
true.
It's not y'all's.
Y'all's.
In listening to Yorn. Yeah, I can't think of the word. But in listening to the way that you guys met.
Oh my God! Yeah.
I had a bunch of questions come up, and I'm totally blanking on them now. So maybe as we start talking, it'll come back.
Okay, Trenton. Oh, so Corey, you heard it. We played it. Well.
Yeah, maybe that's where to start. I think is I think we have to give Corey his due opportunity to represent himself as he would.
Well, it's remarkable. I did hear it one time, and I can say that I've never heard myself talked about quite like that, like with another friend. It almost kind of felt like eavesdropping, but um, I had a very large smile on my face throughout most of it. And it's interesting that we shared this same space and this same moment, that actually this moment lasted 3 hours, 3.5 hours, and neither one of us actually knew that it that long had elapsed. And
Yeah.
one of the things that Sabrina talked about was when she walked into where we were, a place called Alchemy, somewhere that I had never been. And she had never been either. So we were both in a new place and didn't know what to expect. And I was there a little bit early and I was really trying to figure out where I could strategically sit to look cool. Do you know what I mean? And that was not working at all. And so I just decided I'm going to stand here, and I tried to get a waitress to help me, and that was actually a recurring theme throughout the
Yeah,
evening,
the
is sort
waitress.
of, yeah, maybe not, I don't know. And
Could you describe the posture that you were trying to achieve in looking cool?
well,
Is weight more on one leg than the other, and is a hand in pocket? Are you leaning against a wall?
yeah, no, really what it was is I was standing in the middle of this room, and that's where I found myself. And I was literally, and I'm standing there in my North Face jacket with my, shirt untucked, and I'm questioning every fashion decision that I've made in this, as well as the rationality of online dating in general, which, is a whole other story. But I turn around and the bell rings, I believe, over the door, and in walks this person that I've talked to once for less than 10 minutes on the phone. And I pretty much did what I'm doing now, which is everything sort of stopped, and then the fear starts, and then you kind of just step forward, and you remember that you need to breathe in and out. That's how this works. And I walked up to her, and as I got closer to Sabrina, I saw a look on her face that I only could really attribute to great confusion, almost like she had watched someone crash into a wall, and I wasn't sure. I really wasn't sure if she had just seen something outside, or if it was me, and every sort of self-doubt bat in her voice suddenly was like, "This is your moment, Corey. Here's a significant learning opportunity, and you really need to get on that gym membership and perhaps consider cosmetic surgery." And so, this all happens in the blink of an eye. But then I said hi. She said, "I'm Sabrina. I'm Corey," and I said, "Are you okay?" And she's looking at me, and she's having trouble breathing too. And I'm like, "Is this something about this room?" And then she says to me in this small voice, "You're so normal." And again, I'm kind of like, this is not exactly what I expected to have happen. And so, we're looking at each other, and I realized that maybe she should get out of the doorway, and I should stop standing in the middle of the doorway. And I ask her, "Where would you like to sit?" And she's, again, it's taking a little bit of time to process the answer to that question. And "Would you like to sit at the bar?" And she's like, "I don't care." And I was like, "No, we don't want to sit at the bar." And I was like, "Would you like to sit at a table?" And she said, "Sure." But her answer was more of like one of aggravation. And I was like, "Oh, wow, what did I get myself into yet again?" And anyway, we threaded our way back to the back of to a corner
Because
table.
I wanted to sit down. So my side, and maybe I shared that in the previous story, that I was just looking at him going, I wanted to sit. I just wasn't know how to like assert. Like, I want to go back to that cozy booth in the back and sit beside you.
And I didn't know any of this. I wasn't. I really wasn't.
Of course not.
I really wasn't quite sure what was happening, and that kind of lasted a little while. But yeah, so we sat down, and we started talking, and
How did
Yeah.
the conversation lead into stories of barn building? Because I don't think you could have known that that was a important detail to Sabrina.
Yeah. It's true.
Dude, add it to the great cosmic list. I just, it's sort of this remarkable set of really, I
Yeah.
run out of, you know what I'm saying, Sabrina. It's sort of, how did we get to that place? I think you asked, did you ask me, or I told you about when I was in the Pacific Northwest and um, some of the things that I've done and built and did, or how did we get to that
Something about
place?
I don't know, something about what we loved, or I I don't even know, something, but it was exciting
Well, you
because
had
it wasn't
shared,
connected to your job or anything. It was completely separate.
yeah,
So I'm
no,
not sure how we got there. Yeah,
well, you had talked. I think you were talking about how you really wanted to have a big space for a studio,
yeah,
and that
yeah.
you had talked about what you had in San Francisco, and you know I hadn't seen pictures or anything. We'd known each other for probably 30 minutes, and then, you know, I'm an extrovert, which I have actually been learning a great deal about the differences between introverts and extroverts, and it's been quite enlightening. But no, I mean, I've built barns, I've built chicken coops, duck runs. I've run I don't know how many acres of fencing by myself, and don't ask me how. I just like watch a video, read a book, and do it. You know
Well, why?
why?
Yeah.
Well, you know,
I mean, you're talking about this like it's, you know, something that everybody would expect to do during a lifetime, but
well,
I've never thought or considered even, you know, building a duck run for example.
dude, I will totally do that with you. I mean, I love
I would
doing
love
that.
to. That's the
No,
thing. Is that
serious, man.
I
Like,
wouldn't
if you
even
and I-
think about that, but I would love to. Of course, I heard that and I'm like, yes, I want to build a duck
Are
run.
you kidding me? To me, that's the most brilliant thing in the world. And I think maybe it has to do with what I do for a living, which is I spend 40 hours a week making something that doesn't really exist. It kind of exists, but it never really ends. It's always kind of in a perpetual state of undoneness. And for me, getting out of that sense of, you know, it's Word documents and Visio process flows and testing scenarios and all of these things that go into what I do, to be able to put on a pair of Carhartts and a pair of muck boots and stomp around in the mud, listening to the Grateful Dead with a hammer in my hand and like a pocket full of nails, and spend a couple hours nailing things together, and then to step back and go, oh, that's pretty cool. I mean, to me, it's just incredibly gratifying, especially when it serves a purpose. And like with you want a deck or you want shelving. It's like, it's brilliant. It's magnificent, and it's this sense of accomplishment that it's a tangible physical thing that exists. And I don't know, maybe you guys get that from what you do with your art or your painting or your, you know, your drawing and your photography. But for me, it's this sense of, I am doing what I think as a human being that the human condition is to create, and that may be in an artistic form, it may be in a culinary form, it may be in the form of caregiving and raising children, or being, you know, part of a tribe or whatever it is. But to create a structure and something that has utility and stands through countless, say, winters in the Pacific Northwest or here in Wisconsin, you know, I don't know why, but that it's just, I take a great deal of pride in those types of things.
So it's something that comes up, the word physicality, and Sabrina, that word I found it interesting because it's not one that I had really thought of in relation to art before, but it's something that Sabrina would bring up regularly, and so I've just had more opportunity to consider it. And I think there is something about our physical existence, us having bodies and existing in three-dimensional space, that when we create other physical objects, you know, it's kind of an affirmation of our existence. There's something more concrete, I think, to that thing. You know, there's the substance is just as important perhaps as the content, or, you know, or what it means.
Well, and sort of the process. I mean, I'm sure when you all, what media you decide to do it in, what format, the place, the ambiance, what drives you creatively. And it's like, for me, I want to build a birdhouse. I want to make some ridiculously elaborate thing, just, and which barely has utility but looks really cool. And, and I've been thinking about this because one thing in being with Sabrina is I watch her aesthetic sense and how she creates things, and I'm only just scratching the surface in this, but I'm thinking I can't wait to make a birdhouse and then have her turn it into a piece of artwork, because then you have this wonderful synergy of something that has utility and yet will endure, but then becomes this incredibly expressive artistic element as well, and
Well, see, there is something that's interesting to me in that where you say something that barely has utility, and in the profile that Sabrina read, I hate to hold
back to that.
I was waiting for this. Yeah.
Well, it's on my mind because I've been listening to it today, but and it's not fair to bring this up when it's not on your mind, but you talk about things that you don't like, and I'm forgetting the words that you use, but inefficiency was
it was actually needless complexity.
Needless complexity.
Yeah, I love that.
There it is. So, and I'm not trying to say that they're the same thing, but how would you something's lack of utility and needless complexity? I guess that's. How would you differentiate between the two?
So I one time made a birdhouse that was literally 4 feet tall, because I had scraps of lumber, and it was like a 16 birdhouse condominium. You know what I mean? And
Wow.
and I'm sitting there and I'm going, why am I doing this? And it's like, well, because it's there, and it's like, because I've never built a 4 foot 16 unit birdhouse before, and then I'm like, and I like it, and I do this thing where it's like I go in the back of the shelves where I have all this paint, which is maybe as old as I am, and God knows what it actually looks like, but it's like, I'm just going to start doing this, and I'm going to start putting it together, and I'm going to see where this thing goes. And I do it and I make it, and it has absolutely no purpose. Like maybe 2 birds, because of how the nature of birds, might nest and never talk to each other. It'd be a very it would be a very tense situation, especially when there's babies. But I'll look out there and I'll say, like, hey, have you checked out my 4 foot ridiculous birdhouse? There's and I just it's just like, I don't know. I really like taking scraps of wood and trying to figure out what can I make with this, because this is a throwaway. This is something that, it sits in a bucket, and what am I going to do with this? Prop up a chair table in a leg or something, and well, how can I fit this into something so that it's almost like I don't even know what I want to do with it. I want these materials and these loose items that I have rattling around to come in to make something, and it may be utterly ridiculous, but it's like, maybe some woodland creature will think it's cool and be like, Corey, you're like the coolest dude ever. Thank you for building me this Taj Mahal or whatever it is. You know what I mean? It's just
I'm picturing this really flamboyant, ambitious bird that just wants more rooms. It's like, I just need a bigger space.
That's right.
Somebody.
Yeah, it's sort of like the Zsa Zsa Gabor of the bird world moving into my wood scrap birdhouse. But yeah, I mean, it's like, I don't mean to get all like left fieldy about it, but it's kind of like, you have a shop and you end up with all these pieces of in odd shapes and sizes, and it's like, maybe it goes back to being a kid and playing with Legos, or playing. My grandfather made me a set of blocks when I was a boy, and sanded them all by hand and gave them to me one time, and I treasured those things. And they were pieces of baseboard or 2x4, all these different odds and ends of just things that he had rattling around in his garage. And you know, this guy, he's out there, and he was sanded everything by hand and stained it and varnished it, and he gave it to like a 7-year-old boy. And there's something incredibly touching about that I mean, I get that. And maybe I'm indirectly channeling that with how I like to take scraps, you know. I mean, I'm the type of guy where, you know, one of the things about living in Madison, especially about when the college season turns over, is that you literally don't need to go shopping for furniture. You just roll up. Yeah. And I mean, I have an oak bookcase that I helped someone move out of their stairs because I was driving by, hit the brakes, left my car in the middle of the road with the flashers on, ran out and said, "Are you throwing that away?" And they're like, "Yeah." And I said, "I will absolutely take this," and brought it home, and now it's in my dining room and it looks great. But you know, you can drive around and find all of these things, just found materials, and you can do like incredible things. Now, I live in an apartment now as opposed to a house with acres, and so that's rather prohibitive as to the amount of crap that I can, you know, store reasonably without attracting vermin or creating a fire hazard. And so that's curtailed one of my hobbies, but yeah.
How on earth did you guys find each other? This is like uncanny. How in line, just the way your minds work.
I know.
It's just unreal.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I haven't really met any of Sabrina's friends yet except for you. So this is sort of an interesting
You're
feedback.
the first friend, Trent.
Well, I don't know if I'm very representative of a.
Well, you know me pretty well.
That's true.
We've had a lot of conversations, so
Yeah.
we've discussed thoroughly Sabrina's finds on the street.
Yep.
On the podcast.
Well, but there's something more than the practicality of finding something used. It's like there's something deeply meaningful about that process. You know, there's a joy in that I don't think it transcends, you know, just being glad you found something that you could use.
Yeah.
You know, that
you see its potential, what it can become.
That's exactly, and that's what I'm seeing. That's what I'm hearing in your you know, talking about scraps and odds and ends that you find in the workshop, and being able to see some kind of potential in it, or a desire to redeem something that's a cast off. You know, that man, that is just like every conversation that we have on this podcast.
I think it was the podcast where you were speaking with your friend who had repurposed the shovel into jewelry. In your situation, like, do you find yourself recycling things with art, or like you had talked about all this mixed media and things like that?
I definitely not quite in the way that I think you two do, but something in the way that you're talking about your process resonates. I'm just not exactly quite sure how. I think I do maybe similarly in repurposing imagery, imagery that feels like cast off or superfluous or ephemeral, or, you know, like, and trying to rarefy it or make it or imbue it with some kind of importance or meaning, or validate its existence, or, you know, I don't know. I don't know. I'm gonna have to think a little bit more about that, but no, I don't, for instance, find objects and then want to bring them into some kind of installation or sculpture, for example.
You like to go to the Container Store and buy little things like that.
I do.
That's
And
your
I was going to mention that, but it felt like such a not at all like what you guys do. But I do like a shelf that I have, and then I move to a different space. Like imagining all the options of shelving that I have in my arsenal, and how they might fit and work for a different purpose, or maybe be reorganized in a way that's suited to the new space. I do like that, but that's not quite the same thing.
I'm just going to validate your like in need of the Container Store. I will say that. Has someone who is tired of trying to find a 2.5-inch deck screw mixed in with 10,000 other sizes of every other type screw, I am a convert to the need to have those things in their own little place. I'm just going to say that. So.
Yep.
Do you want to read one of the? Do you want to read one of the quotes, Corey?
Oh yeah, we haven't even talked about that.
Well, so I got an email saying that both of you had saved these quotes, right, independently.
Yeah.
In
So
journals.
the beautiful. He sent me the Whitman quote a couple days after we met, and not knowing that, I don't know. So my dad did, his first film was about Walt Whitman, and it was about Whitman coming in, being this huge influence in this small town in London, Ontario, and so it was his huge passion project he did in his 40s, and he in the film, Whitman recites this exact quote, and it's been something that's just sort of an anthem in our family and my dad and the influence. And Corey sends the exact lines to me saying. And I thought maybe, I'm giving, maybe just by chance he saw it online today. He just thought this sounds good. I'll send it to her. And I'm like, wow, okay. But he said, yeah, Whitman's been a real influence on me growing up. And he not knowing anything about that, how much Whitman is a part of my life. In the beginning of Spelling Open starts with that Whitman quote.
So why don't you read the quote?
Sure. This is what you shall do. Love the earth and the sun and the animals. Despise riches. Give alms to every one that asks. Stand up for the stupid and the crazy. Devote your income and labor to others. Hate tyrants. Argue not concerning God. Have patience and indulgence toward the people. Take your hat off to nothing known or unknown, or to any man or number of men. Go freely with powerful, uneducated persons, and with the young and the mothers of families. Read these leaves in the open air every season of every year of your life. Re-examine all of you have been told at school or church or in any book. Dismiss whatever insults your own soul, and your very flesh shall be a great poem and have the greatest fluency, not only in its words, but in the silent lines of its lips and face and between the lashes of your eyes and in every motion and joint of your body. Walter Whitman. I wrote that in a journal when I was 17 or 18, and I remember for me, it was one of these things where every time I had to save up money because I wanted to buy a good book, a nice book to write down all of my complicated teenage boy things. And I remember finding this Whitman quote, and on the opposite side of it was actually the Jack London quote that I had sent you as well. And I thought that there was an interesting counterpoint to these two things because I don't think they're two entirely different sentiments. Perhaps one is maybe more from the extrovert perspective, and maybe one is more from an introvert perspective. But I think the sentiment, to me, I read it as being this Whitman quote as well as the Jack London quote to be very highly aligned.
Can
you want to read that one?
Yeah, Jack London.
Are you sure one of you guys don't want to read it?
Yeah.
Your voice is great.
Yeah.
Or do you want to read it, Sabrina?
Sure.
No,
okay.
I don't. No, I want you read it.
I would rather be.
Sorry. Oh,
No,
would you rather be asked? Corey?
What are you? What did No, I just don't want to monopolize your podcast. That's all.
Not at all.
All right. Okay.
No.
All right. I would rather be ashes than dust. I would rather that my spark should burn out in a brilliant blaze than it should be stifled by dry rot. I would rather be a superb meteor, every atom of me in magnificent glow, than a sleepy, impermanent planet. The proper function of man is to live, not to exist. I shall not waste my days trying to prolong them. I shall use my time. This is Jack London. And that's a guy who, he lived an incredibly amazing life, and he was actually Hemingway's chief inspiration for becoming a writer. And regrettably, Jack lived a very hard living lifestyle and lived well beyond perhaps what was he should have. And with his drinking and how he lived and died when he was 40 years old. But the sentiment behind this, if you take away perhaps the substance abuse, is, again, I just see this incredible alignment with what Whitman says and with this, because they're essentially the same sentiment, is that if you have a sense of being part of a community and you know what good is, and good with a big G, like my old Eastern religions and philosophy professor used to say, then the two sentiments are the same. You would live that passionate life and take joy in the things that Whitman says, and delight in the conflict that you create in yourself by doing them. You know?
Sabrina,
or maybe
can
that's
you
just me.
Yeah, no, that's well said. Sabrina, what is how would you describe what the poem means to you?
Well, my dad read me a lot. You can imagine how much these sort of things. I re-listened to the episodes with my dad the other day, and this, like, I was definitely raised, being read Jack London when I was young, and by my dad, and
I didn't know
I feel like it's just yeah. It's just that just keeps coming. Keeps coming.
Of course it does. Why? Yeah,
Yep.
of course.
Yep, of course it does.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
So it just feels like it was what I was raised to believe in. It's exactly. It's like it's the anthem of childhood and becoming myself, and what I was raised to do in the world, and the way I was raised to live. And I feel like those were the directions I was given by my family, and I really took those to heart, and I think I have lived my life according to them for the most part. So I resonate with them, and I when I hear them, I feel just a resonance with the things I'm committed to about living my life.
Well, let me. I'd like to share something that I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to give voice to it as well as I'd like to, but there was special meaning to me in this Jack London quote when I read. The proper function of man is to live, not to exist.
Yes.
I come from a family where my dad's a doctor. I have two brothers that are doctors, and so that's kind of a comparison that I'm constantly making. The nobility of the medical professions, of saving life, is kind of irrefutable, right? Like you cannot deny the importance of that profession, or the importance of that profession to society. I found myself talking to one of my brothers who was a doctor one time, and I remember saying something like, "So that's what all you do all day is save people's lives." And I said that, and we let it sit. He kind of had a dumbfounded look on his face, like, "Yes, of course, idiot," like, and it sounded like such a stupid thing to say in the moment, like as if that's not enough, to spend your days saving people's lives. But I think what I was, the sentiment or the thing that I was trying to express is that what I value in the path that I've chosen is that what I bring to people, or what I get to participate in every day, is not the maintenance of life, but the living of it. Do you understand what I mean by that?
In through your teaching.
Yeah, through just participating in art making and creation, right?
Yeah.
So when I get to be there when somebody discovers something new, or they see a new possibility or potential, or they make some kind of connection with a new technique or medium that they feel communicates something about themselves that they weren't able to express before, Anyway, so I don't, and I'm not saying that that's any more valuable or better than saving lives, but I think it's a difference in, I don't know.
I see what
I'm not sure what I'm trying to say, actually.
It's like the saying, it's like you're not, saving, you're helping a life actually live.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
there's, and I think what I guess I'm getting at this is probably me trying to justify the decisions I've made in my life, and the having to constantly compare them to, you know, my brothers and my dad, trying to make sense of, well, is what I'm doing worthwhile when you know, you point at what they're doing with their lives is obviously, you know, has value and is important. But I guess this is the difference to me, is like art making is about living, it's about creating, and being a doctor is about maintaining life or preserving life, and they're both important. But anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I interrupted you, and I'm an extrovert, and I'm going to apologize for that. So,
No,
no,
I'm just talking. I get in these circles where I just keep talking about the same thing.
What you said really struck something in me, and it's something I've worked in healthcare for the last decade, and I am in hospitals, in clinics, and I'm in sensitive places within those installations, and I remember this very, very clearly. I was in Seattle, and of course it was raining because it's winter, and I was at one of the medical centers, and I sat down in the waiting room area, the general waiting room area that was right near where oncology is. And I observed a couple that were probably in their 50s or 60s, and there was a man reading a book and reading it very softly, and I don't know what it was, but it could have been something like Nicholas Sparks. I mean, it didn't really matter what the book was, but his wife was very obviously undergoing chemotherapy, and she was weeping and nauseous and rocking back and forth, and he had his arm around her and was reading to her and soothing her with art, with words, with something that someone created. And all around us, you know, there's clinicians, there's nurses, there's doctors, and their job is to focus on treating, you know, an acute situation. You know, patient encounter is over, you move on. And I was just struck by this. It stuck with me because, yes, it's true. There are doctors, and there are nurses, and there are surgeons, and there are spinal specialists, and all these people, and they perform a function, and it is a wonderful, necessary function here in the 21st century. However, the thing that makes us human, and the thing that we go back to, and the thing that keeps us want to being alive, is that which we find beautiful or speaks to us. And it could be a painting, it could be listening to John Coltrane, it could be this book. But in that moment, when things are the darkest, and this couple that obviously had been together for forever, that this man would keep reading with his arm around his wife, who is, you know, being sick from yet another round of chemotherapy, the place that they go is to that which they love and which they feel something for. Yeah. And it's art, you know, and it might be the written word. Now, you know, I don't mean to be maudlin or to be precious in saying that, but I say that in the sense that, you know, whether it be jazz or whether it be a book or whether it be the paintings that I've bought or whatever it is, those are the things that bring us joy when we sit down, when life has, you know, decided that it's going to completely mess with us yet again. And those are the things that we turn to remind us of why it's good to be alive and in our humanity. And
exactly, right.
You know, I mean, and I think, you know, from my non-artistically focused life, I mean, that is how I view those things, you know. And you know, within healthcare, you know, it's I don't know, it's the art that soothes, it's the music that soothes, it's you know, that's what helps you heal. The doctors help you get better, but you heal yourself with art and with creativity and with that which brings you joy and happiness.
Mm-hmm. See, I'm interested in you said something right there and have an assumption there that I disagree with, and that is that you're saying that you don't have an art focused existence. Is that what you said? I can't remember exactly the wording, but you don't. But I understand that, and I guess it's too strong to say that I disagree with it, but I do think the the more that I have these conversations with you and with the others that we've had on the podcast, the more I realize that, I went to art school, and obviously when you go to specialize in something, there's a lot of incentive to really define what it is that you are, or what you're becoming, right? To make clear distinctions, because it makes you feel more important, right? It separates you apart. But I think what that does is essentially it makes like you feel like that you didn't get training in it, so that means that you're not part of whatever that is. But I listen to you talk, and the way that you think about materials and making, and the joy and in stomping around the mud and what have you. And I think that more or less encapsulates what I feel art is. Art is not, to me, what brings me joy about art is not, a traditional oil painting. I mean, there is something in that, but it's something much more general and human than that. Anyway, so I'm interested in these distinctions that we make, and I think there's purpose, there's value in them, but I also think that, as we talked about in the introvert and extrovert episode, that they can keep us from recognizing potential that we have. And anyway, I think you got a maker in you, is what I'm saying.
Yep, definitely.
I don't think you're that far off than Sabrina or myself.
Well, I take that as high praise. Thank you.
Sabrina, we've been talking a lot. What you got going on?
I think what I thought. The introvert extrovert thing has been really something we've been doing a deep dive into this week. I've got like 70. What I like is how Corey, how like I like get really into something, like really like go deep with. Yeah. So Corey, I really appreciate also just like he's all in. He's like, all right, introvert extrovert, and so I'm getting like so many emails like 17 ways to love an introvert, how to understand, and it's so interesting, but there's such a great feeling of like, let's learn about this. And I don't think I've ever, but one thing I've been really energized by, and I think maybe you can relate as an introvert, is previously in other relationships, it's just not something you start talking about immediately. And for me, having really lived my life in the past years, really on my own terms, becoming more myself and knowing myself and understanding what I want, what I value, and so on, that just speaking about, like, I think as an introvert, you sort of immediately try to kind of keep up with an extrovert. And so there's something that has been really great about being curious and exploring that. And
in all fairness, it's been both of us sending you sharing with me introvert things, and then I'm taking them in, and then I'm asking follow-up questions, because I think there's spectrum to everyone, but I try and in the time we've been together, what I'm recognizing is the impact I have on my surroundings, and particularly when we're together, and recognizing that if I slow down, it actually feels fine. Do you know what I mean? And not, I spend my days in sensory overload. Like I explained this to Sabrina, I work in like 4 dimensions, because I don't just think about what is now. I have to think about like 4 forking roads in front of me, and then who that's going to impact, and then it's which is fine when you're an extrovert, because it's like woohoo, like let's go faster, but
wow.
Then when it's done, and it's something that I've had to learn how to do just long before I met Sabrina, was how do you stop doing that, because you can't live your whole life like that. I mean, you can, but then bad things happen, but it's there's these things that I've practiced within myself, just for me, from a self-care standpoint, as far as like, just breathe, just be, just listen to Coleman Hawkins, have a cheeseburger, just slow down, admire the sunset, and what I find is interesting with Sabrina is watching how when we interact based on the articles that she sent me, how if I try something new, that it sort of feels different, but it feels good too, because it's like I don't know, it's like there's another part of me which I get to try and use within this new scenario that is actually much more calm and in the moment, and in the moment feels more meaningful. So I don't know, maybe that's obvious to an introvert, but to someone who is, you know, extroverted and, you know, woohoo, it's a little bit of a revelation. So, don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of woohoo, but you know, yeah.
Yeah. And how to support. We should read those things that you sent about the 10 ways to support an extrovert, 10 ways to support an introvert. Because there were things I didn't realize. I'll read those, some of those. Did you get that, Trenton? I forwarded it to you.
I did. I just have it open. Yep.
How to care for introverts. 1, respect their need for privacy. 2, never embarrass them in public. And I think this also relates to like raising children that are extrovert and introvert more too. Mm-hmm. Never embarrass them in public. Let them observe first in new situations. I really like that. Give them time to think. Don't demand just instant answers. Don't interrupt them. Give them advance notice of unexpected changes in their lives. Seriously. Give them 15-minute warnings to finish whatever they're doing. Totally.
Yeah. It works. It works.
Yeah, it does. Reprimand them privately. Teach them new skills privately. Enable them to find one best friend who has similar interests and abilities. Don't push them to make lots of friends. Respect their introversion. Don't try to remake them into extroverts.
That's a wonderful list.
Yeah. And then the other one is how to care for extroverts. Respect their independence. Compliment them in the company of others. I like that. Accept and encourage their enthusiasm. Allow them to explore and talk things out. Thoughtfully surprise them. Understand when they are busy. Let them dive right in.
Totally.
Totally. Offer them options. Make physical and verbal gestures of affection. Let them shine.
Yes. Absolutely.
What ones resonate with you, Corey, the most?
Well, I think it was one night when we were just frantically sending each other our...
Yeah.
Please don't interpret me the wrong way type emails, you know, as to what an extrovert and an introvert were, because, you know, it's sort of like... Yeah, so, I mean... You know, honestly, it's the allow them to, well, yeah, this is going to come as a shock to you. Allow them to explore and talk things out. For in my situation, I guess, as who I am, I sometimes have to talk to get to where I need to go, and I recognize that can have an impact, though, as far as sensory overload upon someone who's an introvert. So I've been trying to be more careful with that and to slow my thoughts down, because, you know, it's not like I'm manic. That's not it at all. It's just that, you know, I've got like 10,000 things going on in my head, and it's like I need to get it down to like 2. And maybe I can, you know, and maybe not needing 45 minutes to do that is a better way. You know, maybe if we can get it down to like a minute or 2, you know, but that burden is sort of on me, because, you know, I'm trying to communicate something, but I, you know, I'm probably doing it right now. But I let them dive right in,
Totally.
especially with problem solving,
Yeah.
and give us a project, and understand we might be a little obsessive about it until it's done. And then, remarkably, we're going to want another project, and we're going to probably do the same thing. And whether it be go make chocolate chip cookies, go find new furniture, it's just sort of like it's a way for us to. I don't know. The way I look at it is like you essentially are giving a dog like a rawhide, and we're just going to sit there and gnaw on that thing, and we're going to be perfectly content to look up at you and pant and like go, oh wow, you're the best, and then go back to like a raw, and then we can come to you and we're like, we'll just sit next to you. You know what I mean? And yeah, and then obviously number 9, make physical and verbal gestures of affection. I think as an extrovert, because of it's interesting. There's a whole element of this that we missed, where there was another article talking about how the nervous systems between
Yes.
introverts and extroverts were very different,
Yes.
and that you know we don't mean to be completely in overdrive and overwhelming you. This is just kind of how we are, and it was very interesting to read though about like with an introvert, and that to understand that there's someone who has a very different biological sort of imperative and wavelength. And it's like once I processed that, that's when I began to really sort of get it. And it's just neither one. I don't think we can apply a value judgment and say better or worse or whatever it is. That's not it at all. I mean, it's sort of like saying you have a garden full of vegetables and one is better than the other, and it's like no, they're all what they are meant to be. A tomato is a tomato and a radish is a radish, and they grow differently, and they but they're all vegetables. And
Yeah.
I don't know.
I just pulled up that part about the nervous system thing. I'll just read it now
Yes.
for people listening. Realize that introversion is not simply a personality trait, it's a nervous system setting. Here's how I like to explain it. Your nervous system is like a net that catches stimulation in your environment, things like noise, light, words, and facial expressions. If you're an extrovert, you've got extra large holes in your net. You can handle a lot of stimulation before you get overwhelmed. If you're in the middle of extrovert introvert, you got an average size holes. If you're an introvert with highly sensitive nervous system, you catch everything. So you easily and quickly get overstimulated. This is not about liking people or not. It's about biology and how your system processes your environment. Please never make an introvert feel like she's antisocial. She loves people just as much as you do. She just does it differently. Brain scans can actually show us this now. And then they had, Corey, didn't they have one about that, explain that for the extrovert side too? Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
a really interesting metaphor, the net,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense to me. It's been interesting to me as a parent. I brought this up in the past, but I have one daughter that's very much an extrovert, and then my oldest daughter is an extrovert. My second daughter is an introvert, and because my oldest daughter was obviously my first kid, I developed a way of relating to her that even though I'm an introvert, I was relating to her as an extrovert, and that's kind of how she trained me to be a dad. And then my
Wow.
second daughter came along, and so this is how I was taught to be a dad, is to be this certain way. And my second daughter would have very different reactions to that kind of parenting. So, for example, like with my oldest daughter, I can go in and I just plaster her with a kiss on her cheek, and she loves it. I'll purposefully make it like, obnoxious, because she likes the over the top. She likes being smothered. She likes, but my younger daughter just immediately will kind of recoil and pull away and, say, stop it. She doesn't like it. And what I've found is that, with my second daughter, if I come in and just kiss her just very lightly on the cheek and then step away, that given in about 15 or 20 seconds, she'll walk over to me and grab my leg and hug me.
Wow.
And it's like,
Mhm.
you know, whereas my oldest daughter, I'll give her this big kiss on the cheek and then she'll jump on top of my stomach, you know, when I lay down on the couch, you know, because she needs that physical closeness, you know. Anyway, so even though I'm an introvert, I've been learning a lot about what being an introvert looks like from the, you know, from the outside, as I kind of learn my second daughter, you know.
I love that story. I that is something for me. I mean, I don't have kids, and you know, I never thought about it in those terms. You know, that the different personalities of your children, and the different needs that they would have. It's sort of a, I don't know. That's absolutely fascinating
Hmm.
and beautiful.
It's wonderful. It's great being a parent.
I've never seen you be a parent in action, Trent, all these years.
Well, it's exciting. Let me tell you that. I am. Nah, I was just joking. It's pretty dull, I'm sure.
No, 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 no.
When you say it like that, a parent in action, I'm just thinking like,
Well,
right.
I was thinking because Corey and I have talked a lot about this, like the importance of love in action, and so
Hmm.
I was thinking about your like the act for you, an action of loving your children is
Hmm.
what I was thinking about because it is an action.
Well, and for introverts, I think there's also love in inaction, right? In
Yeah.
creating space and distance, you know.
Tell me
Um,
more about that.
I think it's, let's see, I want to refer to the list.
It,
I refer to How to Care for Introverts,
hmm.
entry 1,
Yes.
5, 6, 7,
Wow.
8, 9, 11. Those are all about, I think, inaction of
Mm.
like what does that look like literally in the moment? What that looks like is you standing still and not acting,
Mm.
I like
right?
that. I really do. I mean, again, you're giving me something else to think about, like a frame of reference for this. Hmm.
Hmm.
So what would that look like for you, Trenton?
Um, well, I think for the example I just gave is, you know, with my younger daughter is like the way I love her is just by giving her space, you know, by not kissing her or hugging her, you know, like being close to her. The way I love her is I give her space, let her process until she's ready to approach me. I mean, she desires that. She desires affection. She
Mm-hmm.
desires to feel loved, but she can't receive it in the same way, and she needs it to there to be more space in that interaction. But for
Makes me
me
think
too,
about. Oh, go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say for me too. Like what I've learned with my in-laws is that when we drive up to visit them, if I will just take a couple hours when we arrive to just be alone before we go in the house and start, you know, interacting, I do much better than if we just drive straight to their house and, you know,
Yeah.
start things up because I have time to kind of collect myself and consider what's about to happen and how I'm going to relate to them and, you know, I don't know, it's just that space is really important for some reason.
When you take that space, do you find that you need to move or do you need to be still? You know, do you need to walk in a park or do you need to sit with a book or like how does that work for you?
I think it's less about literal stillness than it is about mental stillness, you know. So yes,
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah.
what I need is to not be surrounded by kids and my wife in an enclosed space in the car. I need to be somewhere where I have literal space, you know, so I could be walking down the sidewalk with a podcast in my ear, you know, just something where I feel like I can pull inside and not have to engage as much with the world surrounding me.
Not have the stimulation.
Yeah, the stimulation, exactly.
Yeah.
That all makes sense. Yeah.
I don't know how two introverts would. I think we're all designed this way differently to complement each other. I think it's interesting because I don't think me being with another introvert would exactly rock my world, you know.
Well, I do think that's probably part of what just is so awe-inspiring is like you see this other person and you're like, how do they do that? You know, because it's so contrary to what, you know, your comfort zone, you know, dictates.
Well, this has been a really good conversation. Good hour.
Has it been an hour already?
I know.
I want to ask one question before I forget.
I just be mindful of your time, Trent.
Oh, I appreciate that. I wanted to ask Corey, I asked Sabrina in our last conversation what song she would cite to that encapsulates that moment when you first saw each other. Is there a song?
Or when we were just together. Not
when
my
you were
terror
together.
on my face.
Right, that first meeting. I just enabled Siri. She started to play songs.
What song is that?
I have no idea.
Yeah, it's actually, remarkably, it's the first song on a mix CD that I made for her. And the song is called Bloom. And I have to go look on my other laptop because I only have 6 laptops open right now for work.
How much did you know about her before you put that on a CD? Bloom? Are you kidding me?
No, that was my whatever. Okay, Cupid name.
I'm sorry. Yep. Go. I'm sorry. I interrupted.
No. Yeah, there's the whole story of the second date and what I didn't know, and and then the progression of that. But no, I love that song. It's a beautiful song, and when I was trying to put a CD together for her, it's just that was the first thing I wanted her to sort of hear from me, like in that song, and it's called Bloom. And of course, I don't remember the artist right now, but it's pretty much exactly what I felt the moment that I met
her. So we had this funny conversation last night about, because, you know, as Trent, you know, like there's a range to me, you know, and to think like to find a match for myself in my life, like it's a big call, you know. It's like I'm a dynamic person. I've got a lot of range, and to find someone who could understand that and celebrate that and also be that way, and, you know, really engaging for me in my mind. But Corey, last night you were just telling the range of, like, I like the girl that eats meatloaf with her hands.
At 3 o'clock in the morning, yes.
Yeah, they can't stop getting up and eating the apple crisp, who wears a cheetah fuzzy thing over her eyes when she goes to sleep. It's like, just a weird gal, just a weird, complex, you know. But it's very validating to feel. I feel very seen by Corey, and that's. It feels very exciting, and as much as I'm very excited, it's also it's a calmness to it, and so.
I echo that from my extroverted perspective, quite honestly, to be seen by you, and to be seen, even though, you know, I am an extrovert, and for us to see each other, and yeah, I mean, this is pretty remarkable for me as well.
Well, that rocked. Thank you for listening to this week, and we will be back next week. We're going to talk about supplies and materials and things we like to use and make with our hands.
Make sure you go to roominthetrees.com. We have some links up there for this episode this week. Rate us on iTunes, and we'd love it if you would help us out by becoming a patron at patreon.com/room.
Room.
T-shirts. Check them
Get
out.
them. They're really great.
They're so cool. I
Yep.
really like how they turned out.
And what should they do this week? What are they going to do? What's our send out?
Oh, the thing is, like, after we just talked about a dude who builds barns and duck runs, it's like, sorry guys, you're just never gonna match up. Go and hang in there.
That's great. I love it. Perfect.